to Friday night's video in our second master series. I do believe this is the 23rd video in our second master series, and the fourth video on dealing with stereo field meters, phase issues, and things like that. Really quick, we wanted to take a look at the phase issue itself. This is problematic, and I'll show you that if I sit there and pull out this here, we were talking about phase inversion going straight across here. First of all, if I go on here and I put this on here, that I've got the phase inverted on one channel. So you can see that it's flatlining all the way across here. How to do that in various degrees is kind of questionable, right? Because if you do it in various degrees about what that phase inversion is, that's it, the issue of its difficulties is kind of hard to eloquate. So the problem is this is one of these tracks. There's a mono track that's been duplicated with one channel completely inverted, and I'm getting this flat line inverted phase across here. Now, with that in mind, trying to deal with this issue when we're talking about phase, that this can be a serious problem for a couple of different reasons. The first problem that we run into with phase issues, this is a very simple concept. So that if we're dealing with like two different tracks that have been captured with two different microphones and trying to visualize that one of the microphones too far away or something like that and trying to correct that, that if you go look on my first master series about how to correct phase and those videos on phase, it'll really help you understand that you're really going to want to look into that some, because it's going to give you a visualization of what the issue is so that you can help deal with it. A lot of times, more often than trying to look at a meter that's going to be giving you some mess to look at that really isn't helping you find what's going on and telling you whether or not that's good or bad for what you're trying to do. And I'll give you a couple of issues on stereo field things dealing with this to try to simplify this concept. Let's say that I've got this mono track and I've duplicated it completely to where it's another separate track. Now, whether I captured it with another microphone or not, this is a duplicated track, so they'd be exactly the same. So I'd be getting a mono effect, correct? Now, that's just like saying it's captured from two exact microphones that are exactly the same. Now, if I go onto one track and I start putting delay on it, even 1 millisecond on one side or the other, all of a sudden I get this looking here, right? I'm not getting that nice round full thing going on at all, correct? I mean, it's just not happening, correct? Now, if I step that up and we go in the intervals like we talked about in my first master series, you know, in mixing concepts, and at the end, before the mixing concepts, we talked about doing stereo field work, and we talked about that when we were doing mixing the first master series. If I go in intervals, let's say I go 6.1 millisecond, you see what that looks like. And then I go to like 6 or 12.2, see what that looks like. If I go to, say, 18.3, what does that look like? You know, and going at these intervals, that this is not really telling me a whole lot, correct? So if I go back here, any one of those intervals, if you're dealing with a duplicated track, may or may not sound fine. I've learned that sometimes they do and sometimes they sound phasey. So I might have to find an interval that doesn't sound phasey. Not that my meter is going to tell me that it's right or wrong. Does it sound phasey or not? Does that make sense to where it's going to be helpful to add the stereo field? So an example of that is really simple with that there. You know, to take that a little bit farther is, let's say that I'm going to put an equalizer on one of the tracks, like it's been captured from a different microphone that has a different frequency response. So let's go in here and let's take a look at this with this equalizer on here that's got a little bit of low end and high end cut out of it. And if I engage this, what happens? Look what I have happening. Like it's two different microphones, so it's obviously changing the stereo field, is it not? And all I'm doing is messing with equalization. So this is having an effect. And if I drop out some more of the high end, and be more aggressive with that, it changes it even more, as you can see. And if I go do the same thing to the low end and start cutting out the low end, it has a different effect. As you can see, it's changing what the stereo field looks like. We're dealing with the spectrum, so it has an impact on what's going on, so that you can get that, understand that concept. And not only that, let me pull this out of the way for a minute. Let's also go, and we were talking about stereo field work. We're working with the equalization, making one. I mean, you go back and watch those videos, and it become kind of an apparent kind of thing. And also, we're talking about detunings. So if I go in here and I do tune this up 1 cent, what happens? Nothing. If I go up 3 cents, what happens? Nothing. If I go up 4 cents, what happens? Bam! What just happened to the stereo field? There got no delay or nothing on there. What the heck is going on here? Now, this is a huge thing that has to do with that nice round thing we're looking at, nice stereo field, because as this goes along and whatever instrument's vibrating, doing modulations with volume and frequency modulations and whatever kind of instrument you're dealing with, it's changing it, tuning it. So what's happening here is you've got this detuning effect that's changing it. Let's say I go up to like 6 cents. What's happening? What does it change it to? It changes it to something else. If I go up, let's say go minus 6 cents and see what's happening. Now it changes it to something else. Now look at that. That's starting to look a lot more like that nice stereo field thing we're looking at, right? Because they're not exactly tuned exactly the same. Now the concept here is between that, and that's also we've got our equalizer, and one side or the other that we've done some different equalization on it, and that's going to add to that also. I mean, just adjusting it would be 2 different microphones. Does that make any sense? So, now you've got that also affecting that stereo field, and also if I add delays to it, now what do I have? So now I'm going to the delays, and let's say I'm going to go 18.3 milliseconds. Get a pretty wide delay. And what happens to it? See, doesn't look like it's doing a whole lot. Let's say if I go up to like 36.6, what happens to it? It's changing it again. Does that make sense? Or if I come down, let's say 12.2 and come up to that interval, or if I go to 6.1 and just a slight delay. Now there's just a slight delay on that. Now these are 2 exact vocals they're not even 2 separate microphones that I'm capturing some type of, track so that I have a stereo track to deal with, correct? This is just 2 mono tracks. And they could be bounced together as a stereo track. This is panned right 50% and left 50%. So if I go here and I go 0 on there and I turn off the EQ, and I go down to here and I zero that out again, I'm back to this mono track. Now, if I go up here and I say this one is left 100% and this one's right 100%, okay, so now I've got them right and left 100%, correct? Well, you can see this one's off a little bit and it's even showing you. But you go off over here, it's mono again, right? So with that same understanding, and we tune it a little bit differently. Let's go plus 6 cents. Plus 6 cents on the tuning. You look how wide that stereo field got, but you look how it's flat lining out there like it sounds like it's got a phase issue, right? And we haven't even dealt with any delay in any way, shape, or form. Then we come in here. Oops, I did that to the wrong side for the experiment. Okay, so then we come down over in here. Let's go back to this track over here and go plus 6 cents on there. Okay, so there we go. And you can tell that it's kind of flatlining it out. That's going to sound, it's telling it that it's a phase issue, but it's not, correct? So, and then we go in here and turn on the EQ. So now we got it right 100%, and you could tell that it got wider, right? So then we turn on the EQ to see what else that does. Well, it's actually, you see all the added ribbons in there that's actually, you may not quite comprehend that, but what it's doing, it's adding width to the stereo field. Now, on top of that, we come in here and we start putting delay on that. So on this track, I'm going to go, way up, 36.6 milliseconds. I mean, really wide. Does that make sense? So I've got this really wide stereo field happen. Let's half that to 18.3 milliseconds and see what happens there. Now you can still see I'm getting this flatlining thing here happening because of this over here, which has nothing to do with delays. Let's go and say this is minus 3 cents. Minus 3 cents on the tuning. See if that helps that some. It seemed to help it a little bit, not a lot, but some. Let's go minus 6 cents. So you can understand it's stopping that sum, and it's actually widening it in its stereo field. So the whole reason I wanted to point this out is because whether or not it's not just delays, it's equalization. You got two different microphones that have different frequency responses. It might, detunings and uptunings and things like that are going to have effect on the phase, and also your delays on one track or another, the distance on the microphones and things like that's going to have effect also. So you understand these three things and other things. We're just talking about a little bit of equalization, a little bit of tuning, and some delays that we know we're going to do with pannings in trying to deal with stereo field. All of those aspects affected it, correct? So it's not like some static thing that it's just a phase issue. So to try to get that into your head so that you can understand the basic concept of why I was trying to point this out is so that you could understand that the problem is way more complex than just something really simple, to where you go deal with a phase issue like I talked in my first master series, that it's not just that's the problem. I didn't talk about that a lot because that first master series was trying to get you to get a production done. And if you practice doing what I showed you, you should have been able to get a radio ready production done in time, learning how to do a good job at everything I taught. But I didn't get this second master series is to take you to that next level in your knowledge and wisdom and understanding what's going on. So you understand that it's a much more complicated issue. Now, not only are those things affecting it, other things you do in the DAW, surprise, 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 can also affect it. Ta-da! What is that? That's a mess, isn't it? It's like trying to deal with intermodulation distortion. It's a problem. So the issue that I really want to get across in this video talking about phase is that phase is a problem. And the biggest problem you'll come into is, let's go ahead and put this back to 0. See how much time I have in the video. Let's turn this off, and let's go down here and let us make sure there's no delay on here at all. And let's scoot this out of the way for a minute, because when we get into a phase issue, we're looking at this, right? Okay, here we come down in here. We talked about when I was dealing with fixing phase issues. Now this one has oops, sorry. These two here, let's kind of broaden these out so we can see them a little bit better, is lining these up. So, you got markers to try to line these up so you can see if they're off a little bit for dealing with phase issues. We deal with delays and things like that to help things, but normally you can visualize a phase issue really easily. Does that make sense? I mean, it's not going to change over time normally, no matter where I scroll through here and look at this, that if it's got a phase issue back there, it's going to have a phase issue here. If these two tracks were recorded from two different microphones that are a duplicated track that didn't have a phase issue to start with, once you line them up, they're going to line up anywhere, or they'll be off anywhere, and it's easy to fix that problem, right? The question is when it's a problem. So this becomes something of, it's an auditory thing a lot of times more than anything else, because when you start getting into this and you're looking at, let's say this is off a little bit. Let me just take this and move this over to there. Right now, I've moved that over. That's obviously a problem. There's no doubt probably in my mind that that's a problem. But if I turn this on and look at it, what am I seeing? I'm seeing this trying to go flat line. Does that make sense? You can see it trying to flat line. It's going down below here, but it's trying to flat line out on you. So it's showing you a footprint kind of flatlining. So between your visualization and your meter, that you should be able to visualize that fairly easy and understand when that is happening in that simple way. And don't make it any more complicated than that for now. So I hope you enjoyed this video on phase complications, and I will see you in the next video.